Welcome to the Great Pause. Ahoy, I'm David Perry. It's been 48 days since the California state shelter order was issued. We're glad to have you with us. Today we have a great show, including topics that range from help with your taxes, rent, food, and to everything we've learned as a community from days past that might help us, well, get through the great pause now and make the great recovery even better. Also today, we're introducing a new segment with our senior reporter, Eileen Wu. And of course, we'll be airing those videos that viewers have sent us, telling us how they're doing and what they're doing to survive the great indoors during the great pause. But first, we're going to talk with my lovely co-host, Jennifer Jolly, and her interview with Evan from Clara Health. Jen, take it away.
Thanks, David. Our next guest graduated from UC Berkeley at the age of 16, and he became the youngest ever neuroscience PhD student at MIT. Well, now he's doing some of the most important research in the world right here in our own backyard. He is the CEO of San Francisco-based Clara Health and the co-founder of World Without COVID. Evan Ehrenberg, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Well, Evan, let's dive right in. Tell me about World Without COVID. What is it? What are you doing?
Sure thing. So, just to history, we started Clara Health 4 years ago to democratize access to clinical research to help the public be able to more easily volunteer and take part to access whether it's vaccines or treatments or diagnostics. And we've done this for every condition that's out there. And with the COVID-19 pandemic, we wanted to take all of the research that we had going on with the platform and make the public aware that we're a free resource that they can use to contribute to ending this pandemic and accelerating medical research. And so we actually had Raj Kapoor, the Chief Strategy Officer at Lyft, reach out to our team to ask about creating a registry and a platform for helping expedite this research. And we had already been working on that, had that underway. So we sort of joined forces and created World Without COVID, which is this nonprofit initiative that we're powering to allow anybody, whether you do not have COVID-19, whether you've recovered, to actually take part in this research and help us end this pandemic.
What will this research find out? Will we find a cure? Will we find a vaccine? What are you finding out?
So there are nearly 1,000 clinical trials being run on COVID-19 right now. And there's everything from, what you might think is the obvious, like obviously there's research on vaccines and treatments and diagnostic tests. But there's also research into the effects of this pandemic on our population, on our mental health, on how effective different social distancing measures have been. And so there's just such a broad range. This is so important to society, and the research has started so recently. We're just trying to find out as much as possible, and we're happy to play our part to help try to expedite that.
Walk me through how people can help be a part of this incredible research. So I go online, I look up World Without COVID or Clara Health, I register, I show up, I donate blood plasma, I donate blood. Walk me through this process.
Sure thing. So you just go to worldwithoutcovid.org. There's plenty of information there to walk you through everything. But to join, all you need to do is fill out a really short form that just kind of goes through, your some medical conditions around COVID-19. And we just use that information to be able to match you, of the 1,000 clinical trials out there. We just want to show you the ones that are actually relevant to you. And so once you fill that out, it takes 1 to 2 minutes. We show you all of the opportunities, whether it's in research, whether it's in blood plasma donation that you have available. And then you can click through to read more about those, ask our team questions. We're happy to help out. And then anything that you're interested in getting involved in, you can just apply right there, and we'll only share your information with the research studies that you apply to so that they can validate that you're an eligible participant. Otherwise, we only use your information to show you what's relevant.
You mentioned blood plasma. Why is that such a need for people to donate blood plasma to research right now?
Sure thing. So we talked about how people are studying vaccines and treatments and diagnostics. And one of the treatments that is being investigated is the use of blood plasma donated from people who have already recovered from COVID-19. The idea being that you have antibodies for fighting COVID-19 and doing a transfusion of that blood plasma in somebody who, for example, does not yet have COVID-19 but may be an at-risk population. It may make it less likely for them to get COVID-19, and doing it in patients who currently have it may make their symptoms less, or it may help them recover faster. These are still being investigated, so there's clinical trials that are testing them to see how effective it is, but they can't run if there aren't people donating blood plasma to be used as the potential treatment.
And just to clarify, are you looking for people to come in and help with this kind of research who have already tested positive for COVID-19, or does it matter?
It actually doesn't matter. With about 1,000 studies on the platform today and many more being added every single day, there's an opportunity for everybody to play a part. If you're healthy, then you're needed for vaccine trials, you're needed for diagnostic tests. If you have been infected, then you're needed for treatments. And if you've recovered, then you're needed for different diagnostics to test for antibodies and for things like plasma donation. And in general, even outside of these sort of interventions where you typically would have to go in person somewhere, there's a lot of virtual studies that are being run where it can be as simple as downloading an app on your phone. There's things that are recording your cough to try to help with diagnostics. There's mobile nurses who will come and do blood draws. So a lot of this can be done from your home very, very easily with just a few minutes of your time.
Evan, there are so many unknowns with what we're dealing with and living through in this time. How, just from your standpoint, and I know that you don't have a crystal ball, but where do you think we are in finding some real answers here? Knowing whether antibody tests show whether we can get sick again or not, knowing whether there's, just all these crazy questions that we all have. How close are we to finding real answers?
So we're finding more and more every single day, but I would say that we're still in the early phases. So a lot of the treatments that are being tested right now are actually treatments that had previously been tested for other conditions that are seeing if they work here as well. And there's new research that's being done on COVID-19 specific treatments that are purpose built for this, but those are going to take even longer. And so what we're likely going to see is it's not going to be that all of a sudden this is fixed, but we're going to have research come out, and our methods of handling this are going to gradually get better. And this applies to everything from treatments to the tests being better to the ways that we employ social distancing strategies, figuring out what's really working best and iterating on that. And that's what we're going to see come through the following months, is we're just going to continue to gradually get better at this.
Evan, being that Clara Health does all this kind of clinical research day in and day out, did you see this coming?
The spread of the pandemic was not something that we could have fully predicted. We were in this as much as anybody else in healthcare was, and hoping for the best, but sort of preparing for the worst. The one thing that I think we are not surprised by is the speed of research. I mean, research is incredibly slow. Make sure that's done, in an effective manner, in a safe and ethical manner. And a lot of that has been expedited because of how important this pandemic is and how important the research is to a solution for it. But what you see in clinical trials is 86% of them fall behind schedule because they don't have enough eligible volunteers to take part. And you see the same thing in COVID-19, which is why we built World Without COVID, to sort of help people do their part, to volunteer and take part for this research and make sure that it doesn't get delayed like most other clinical trials do.
Okay, come on, Bay Area. You have a job to do. If we're going to wipe this thing out, if we're going to all get through this together, you need to step up and become a part of these clinical trials. I'm in. My veins are in. Whatever you need from me, I'm in. Evan, one last question before we let you go. What is getting you personally through this great pause?
I feel so fortunate to be able to work on something that is impactful. Our entire team feels really, really fortunate. One member of our team actually lost her aunt to coronavirus infection this year, and has really felt empowered to be making a difference on it. And so every day getting to wake up and work on this and help people and help the research is really meaningful to me. But on top of that, working to eat as healthy as possible, make sure I'm keeping up with exercise and doing things like meditation and stretching. I mean, these are all things that have been proven time and again to be really, really helpful with mental health, which is going to be something that's absolutely critical in this time of shelter in place. So I've been trying to keep up with those as much as I possibly can in between the work.
Evan, we are so incredibly lucky to have you here in our community and to have had you here on our show. Thank you so much, Evan Ehrenberg, World Without COVID and Clara Health. Please, everyone, go to worldwithoutcovid.org. Sign up to be a part of this incredible research. Evan, any last words?
Just thank you so much for having me. Thank you for anybody watching who does decide to join the World Without COVID initiative. We're so thankful for your help. The world is. And if people are interested in clinical research in general and how they can help with other conditions, you can just visit clarahealth.com. It's entirely free. We're happy to help out and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much again. All right, David, I think we have a tall order here. I know I'm ready. I'm ready to donate blood, donate plasma. What are you going to do to help out here?
Well, I just think that interview you did was so amazing. It reminded me of the movie Contagion, which of course was also about a pandemic, even worse than this if you can imagine it. But I don't know if you remember the film. It was scientists and researchers from the San Francisco Bay Area that ended up coming up with a cure. And I think that's going to be the case now with people like Evan and you signing up to take part. I will too. But Jen, I want to ask you something. How are you getting through the great pause? What is your secret? Evan seemed to be very healthy, meditating and doing exercise. How are you getting through? Wow. I'm not quite that, focused. I have jokingly said that what's getting me through the great pause, besides my husband's patience and great cooking, is evenings with chili cheese Fritos and BritBox. That's what's getting me through. But, seriously, this show is about resources to help people all over the Bay Area get through the great pause and into the great recovery. And one organization that has been helping people get through hard times for a long time is Project Open Hand. So right now, let's toss it to our senior reporter, Eileen Wu, coming to you from Studio A at Beyond Picks. Eileen?
Thanks, David. I'm really excited to be here today with Paul Hepfer, CEO of Project Open Hand. Paul, welcome to the Great Pause. We're really thrilled you could join us today.
Thanks, Eileen. We really appreciate this opportunity.
And of course, Project Open Hand has been such an inspiration for so many of us here in the Bay Area. Ruth Brinker really goes to show how one person can make such an impact. Can you tell all of us a little bit more about your work and your services to the community?
Sure, thanks. Again, Project Open Hand, we're celebrating our 35th anniversary this year. And incidentally, I think it's really especially appropriate to mention that Ruth's birthday is on May 1st. So,
happy birthday to Ruth.
Yes, coming up on Ruth's birthday. And I can't think of a better way to celebrate her legacy and all she's done for this community than for us to continue to really build on what she started 35 years ago. Project Open Hand provides approximately 1 million meals a year to San Francisco and Alameda County. And we really focus on the most vulnerable in the community. And those are individuals with heart disease, diabetes, HIV, cancer, and other complex chronic health issues. We provide medically tailored meals, medically tailored groceries. We have 2 grocery centers, one in Alameda and one in San Francisco. And we do a lot of home delivered meals for individuals that aren't able to come out and pick up their own food.
That's incredible. And I've heard a lot about how you have tailored these meals, like you mentioned, the medically tailored nutrition. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that's different, how what your services provide are different than other meal providers?
Sure. Yeah, for people that are dealing with some complex chronic health issues, it's really important for them to have the information, the medication, and all the other resources needed to self-manage their health condition. So like, for instance, if you have heart disease, our meals are created with a registered dietitian working hand in hand with our chefs and our kitchen staff to really provide that meal that is going to help that person maintain the highest level of health. That's similar if you have end-stage renal disease, someone that has dialysis, they have special nutritional needs that really they can't get just from, ordering from a restaurant or even at your basic grocery store. So our meals are tailored for all those individuals and with those specific health conditions in mind. So really, when we talk about, you hear a lot of talk about food security and food insecurity. What we really think it's important to talk about is nutrition insecurity, because someone that has these special diet requirements, they have above and beyond needs to help them manage their health conditions. And there's a number of agencies throughout the state that are part of the California Food as Medicine Coalition that meet those individual requirements.
With your focus on food as medicine, it could be challenging to meet the needs of your clients and your community. Can you tell us a little bit about how Project Open Hand is adapting to to the challenges of this time?
Sure. Yeah, before the shelter-in-place mandate on March 17th, I believe, we served meals, hot daily meals at over 16 sites throughout San Francisco. And these were locations where seniors had the opportunity to go and socialize and get a hot meal provided by us and a few other providers in the city. And when the shelter-in-place recommendations came down, we more than doubled our production of individual frozen medically tailored meals and worked with volunteers and our staff and a number of people to in very short order figuring out a distribution channel to get the meals to those individuals. So now they do have medically tailored meals delivered right to them, because really those are the individuals that we know nationally and throughout the world that have the greatest complications associated if they do contract COVID.
Okay, now we are running out of time, Paul, but I do want to touch on how the community can support Project Open Hand. And that is, I would love to hear just a few thoughts on what you would like to share with local leaders, as well as just the general public. How can we help and support your efforts?
Well, this organization was really founded by volunteers, and we have over 100 volunteers a day before the COVID virus outbreak. And because of social distancing, we had to dramatically reduce the number of volunteers that we have, which has meant we've had to hire more labor, and we've had to bring in part-time people to produce, to make up for where we've lost in volunteer help. So really one of the greatest ways to support us is go to our website and commit to purchasing medically tailored meals for people that are sheltering in place, and to really pay attention to this issue over the next 12 months. This isn't a 1-month issue. We're really concerned about the nutrition security of our most vulnerable over the month and over the next year to come, really.
Well, happy birthday to Ruth again, and thank you so much for joining us, Paul. We really appreciate all that you and your team are doing, and I'm going to go ahead and send it back now to David and Jen.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Project Open Hand is one of the first organizations that I volunteered for when I came to San Francisco. I mean, they've been helping people who were food insecure for decades, and then people living with AIDS, HIV. So, it really is proof that the Bay Area model of nonprofits, well, it takes more than a pandemic to keep them down. In our first program, we invited business owners to send us some selfie videos, tell us how they were doing, what they're doing to get through the great pause and into the great recovery. Well, we got some great responses and wanted to share them with you now. So here you are, Voices from the Bay. Take a look.
Hi, I'm Christina Clausen from pandatree.com, where we teach kids Chinese and Spanish online. As a mom of 2 teenagers, my tip right now is to let your teens sleep till 11 or noon and not worry about it. There's plenty of research that shows it's hard for teens to fall asleep until late at night, and letting them get those extra hours of sleep in the morning will reduce their stress and just make them better human beings. In addition, it's a great time for language learning, so visit pandatree.com for some free Chinese and Spanish games that you can play online with your kids.
Hi there, this is Paulo Gonzalez. I'm co-founder at Wellnight. You can learn more about us and our mission at wellnight.com. my advice for keeping sanity during COVID-19 isolation is to make sure that we reach out to family members and friends that we usually do not have that much time to reach out to. It's also a really good time for learning new things, keeping up with our reading, and overall enriching our minds. I personally have found profound support with my team members. We've launched what we call our remote happy hours on Fridays, and that has enabled me to connect with them on a personal level. I've also met their family members, so this has been my positive take out of this situation. I hope you also take something positive out of it, and make sure you stay safe and mindful. Bye.
Hi, I'm Rachel Friesen. I'm one of the owners of Church Street Flowers in the Telegraph Hill neighborhood of San Francisco. And you can find us at churchstreetflowers.com or on Instagram at Church Street Flowers. And our operations are completely closed right now, but we're at home staying safe and healthy and being with our families, our toddlers, going for long walks in the neighborhood, and just appreciating the beauty around us right now and trying to stay sane and stay connected to our friends and families. We're so thankful that we live in an area that is taking this all seriously, so hopefully we can get back to things sooner than later. And we can't wait to start designing for residences again soon and eventually build our way back up to businesses and events as safety allows. So we hope you're all hanging in there and staying safe and healthy, and we can't wait to be designing for you again soon.
Wow. Well, it may not seem like much to some, but staying home to keep others safe, that's what this is all about. And after weeks and weeks, we're all getting a little tired of it. I have family in Spain and I have many friends in Italy, and they have been sheltered in place, actually locked down for much longer actually than any place in the United States. So just proof that this pandemic is really worldwide. Never before has one planet shared being at home all at the same time. It's taken an absolutely heroic effort, and we should be especially proud of one another and our communities in the Bay Area that we continue to flatten, actually squash the curve. But we need to keep doing that so the great pause leads into a great healthy recovery. And while we wait the month out for stay-at-home orders to lift, we want to hear from you. So please send us a story or a selfie movie to let us know what you're doing to stay safe and sane to pass the time. You can email us at thegreatpause@beyondpics.com. And if the file's too large, don't worry. If you can't send it by email, we'll respond with an upload link. And again, our email address for that is on our YouTube page. Up next, Jen is back with a real live Bay Area Answer Man.
Thanks so much, David. Okay, on to another incredible interview. We all have so many questions right now, and getting an answer from an expert, someone we trust to have the actual right answer, next to impossible, right? Well, not if you know about a site called Just Answer. Now, what is it? Well, here's how I explain it to all my friends. It is the trusted online one-stop, no BS resource for getting all of your tough, embarrassing, critical spouse, bet-winning, and potentially life-saving questions answered, period. What do you think about that introduction? CEO of Just Answer, Andy Kurtzik, joins us live from his home in Marin. Did you like that, Andy? Do you think I captured the what is Just Answer question well in that?
I love it. You're hired.
All right. Well, Andy, thank you so much for being here with us. Explain what Just Answer does. And even more importantly, why do people pay for answers versus Googling something?
Of course. So Just Answer, like you said, connects people live with real experts, doctors and lawyers and mechanics and accountants, 700 different categories. And these are real live verified experts. So unlike Google, which is free, where you get 100 billion results and you have to figure it out all on your own, on Just Answer, you just ask the question and a real live expert walks you through, asks you some questions sometimes, figures out what the problem is, and then gives you an answer live just for you, personalized and specific just to your exact situation.
I have a little bit of an admission to make. I use it about 15 times a day myself, and it's everything from really big questions like, I have a scratchy throat. Do I have a fever? Is it the coronavirus? Huge, big, scary questions, all the way down to, little funny little questions that I should know about my car mechanic questions. So you touched on the fact that you have more than 700 experts. What are some of the categories that are really booming right now that so many of us are kind of stuck at home and have all these things that are breaking that we don't know how to fix? We can't just walk over to the store. How have things really changed?
Yeah, so we've got 12,000 experts in 700 different categories. Yeah, a
Oh
lot.
my gosh.
A lot. They're live answering questions all day, every day from people just like you and me. And mechanics, doctors, lawyers, accountants, tech support, home improvement, veterinarians. It's been interesting to see the surge in traffic. We're getting a lot more questions since before the pandemic started. People are needing virtual consultations with doctors, as you can imagine. Telehealth is big right now. Online sessions with lawyers, and they need to fix their appliances and their gadgets themselves without venturing outside or having somebody come into their house.
What is this like when you bring on an expert? And let me tell you why I'm thinking of this question, Andy. It's because I'm thinking there are more than 30 million people have filed for unemployment recently. We are facing just this incredible shortage in job security. And it got me thinking about, if you run a small business already and you have a certain amount of expertise, if you're a mechanic, a plumber, a DIY expert, somebody was telling me that you're seeing an uptick in questions for sewing machine experts, small appliance experts. Your fridge goes on the blink and you don't know what to do or how to get it fixed. If somebody is watching this and they have that expertise, walk me through the onboarding process. And then I know most sites where it works with freelancers, you're able to make a few $100 here and there. How much money do people? It's a two-part question. I'm asking these very long, complicated questions. What's it like if I want to come work with Just Answer, and how much money can I make?
Yeah, great question. So you're right. The world needs experts right now. People are trapped at home. Maybe their income is down or turned off. They need experts to help them with things. I mean, who wants to take their car to the shop and pay $1,000 or if your appliance or washing machine is broken like ours was recently, or your sink is leaking like ours was recently, right? You don't want to pay full price retail to have somebody come to your house. I asked them Just Answer, and with my handy Just Answer screwdriver, I was able to fix our own sink and get rid of the leak there. So it's absolutely a huge source of need. By the way, the surge we're seeing in sewing questions is because people are trying to sew masks, both for themselves, for their families, and for hospitals and others in their neighborhood and their community. So there's all kinds of interesting uses for having a real live expert, right? You're trying to sew these masks and your Singer sewing machine breaks down. What do you do? Well, Just Answer's got sewing experts that help you as well. So and your other question was about the experts, how to become an expert, why to become an expert. So why? It's first and foremost to help people. People, the world needs experts right now more than ever, and it's a great way to just help the world community with problems like all the examples I've shared with you. Secondly, it's a good source of income. We have experts make anywhere from $20 a month if you're just answering, a little bit, all the way up to, we had one expert make over $60,000 last month for 1 month's work.
Wait. What? Is that true?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't?
That's true.
I mean, so what does it take to be kind of a high roller expert? $60,000 in 1 month? I mean, would I have to be answering 50 questions? Like, what does that even look like? How does somebody get to that spot?
Of course. So we had 4 experts make over $50,000 last month. That's 1 month's work. And you're right, you can be doing that from the comfort of your home, on your laptop, from the beach, wherever you feel comfortable. You don't have to go face to face to see anybody. And, we have one veterinarian that moved to the Big Island and just answers questions on the beach on his laptop. An amazing lifestyle.
Hey, do you need a journalist? Do you need a TV host? Hello, here I am. Yeah.
It's an awesome job.
That's amazing.
That's right. And no
Yeah,
cost,
that's
right?
amazing.
It's not like Airbnb or Uber where you have to have a car and pay the rent and all that, or the mortgage, right? All you have to do is offer up your knowledge, your experience.
I would think that this could almost single-handedly save some small businesses that otherwise might not make it through this pandemic. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. And that's a big message we're trying to get out there is we're here to help. If you're a plumber or a lawyer or a doctor or a mechanic, accountant, and you're looking for a way to make some income right now, we need your help. The world needs your help.
Oh, I love that. And you and I first met, I don't know, 15 years ago or something. And you said, you know, Jen, our whole mission statement can be summed up in we help people. And I have never forgotten that. And so when we talked about doing this story, we went into this whole coronavirus pandemic times. I just keep coming back to that, how we can help people, how you can go to Just Answer to get help, and really the amount of comfort that gives us in this time of need is incredible. But then also you can go to Just Answer to help others. Last but not least, Andy, let me just ask you one quick question here, and that is, how has your life really changed? What have you learned during the shelter-in-place time?
Well, so I've learned a lot. It's just been fascinating to see all the different trends and what's happening in the world. So, for example, I should share as a public service announcement, you should not be drinking bleach right now. We are getting a decent number of questions from people that aren't sure if they should be drinking bleach, and no, you should not be drinking bleach. So, you know, learning all kinds of interesting lessons like that, and people need help in all kinds of unique and strange ways. Another interesting thing that we learned was quite early was that, you know, something that I don't personally appreciate, but if you have child custody, right? How do you deal with child custody right now? Right? If you're supposed to switch every week and now your kid is stuck at home with you, how do you make that switch? And, you know, lots of people struggling with lots of real everyday problems like that I just didn't think about at the beginning of all this, that I'm so proud and happy that we're able to help people with right now.
Well, I got on the website and I saw that you have not only helped billions of people really, but you've also saved more than $3 billion. So you go to Just Answer, you ask a question, it costs $5 to sign up, about $40 a month for unlimited questions. But if you take that same question to a lawyer, it's $250, $450 an hour. Same with accountants, finance experts, insurance experts. I mean, it's really an incredible service. And I'm just so, so glad that you're here with us today. Andy, I have like 50 other questions I want to ask you, but I have a feeling we'll be talking more again very soon. Thank you so much for your time with us here on The Great Pause.
Thanks, Jen.
All right, Andy Kritsik, CEO of Just Answer. Next up, David has someone with answers for some of the most perplexing puzzles that we all face this and every year. David?
Yes, well, of course, tax time is never a good time. And this year it's been delayed for a few months, but talking to our tax guy the other day, I realized that it's not making his life easier, it's actually making it much more complex. So actually just a little bit ago, I had a chance to speak with an amazing person, someone who answers all of our questions about why it's been delayed, also why the census is so important to tax time, and to give us a little clarity and what all of this means.
Hey, David, I'm sitting here scratching my nose, listening to you, and now all of a sudden I'm live. It's just one of those moments. How are you, my friend? You look amazing.
Well, thank you, thank you. I was going to say the same thing to you. You always look great. I love your choices in blouses, by the way. It's kind of Aloha meets Charlie's Angels. It's really quite something.
Let me give you the full view. It's actually a dress. I'm like ready to go play tennis, you know, isn't that? I'm trying to bring a little levity, a little bright light here to these pandemic times. Okay, so you asked me a question and then you couldn't hear me earlier about what am I doing to get through these pandemic times? And I was starting to say I'm drinking more than normal.
I appreciate your honesty.
Busy. Thank you. I'm by no means like in trouble with it or anything, but like 2 of those, 1 to 2 of those seltzer, those flavored alcoholic seltzers, Trulies or White Claws, I'm super into those, like Monday through Friday, and then I don't drink at all on the weekends, which is crazy. It's something I
Well,
did a
you kind of
story on
switched it.
recently. Yeah, kind of switched it up, and I did a story with another Bay Area company recently for USA Today, one of the places where I write a column, and the company is called Backtrack, and they're one of those alcohol breathalyzer companies. They make them, you plug them into your phone. They ran the numbers right after we first started sheltering in place, and drinking was up like 620% Monday through Friday, and then took a big nosedive on the weekends. And it's so weird how we're all like, hey, weekends don't really mean anything. Like every day is pretty much a work day now. Every night's pretty much a school night or not. So it's weird how, and Evan also kind of hit on mental health. Like it's strange how much our lives have changed, but also may remain changed. Not about the drinking so much, but the other thing we keep hitting on is like how wonderful it is to be at home with our kids. Like a lot of people are saying they're not going to go back to work after, and companies like Andy's with Just Answer, all these companies are trying to pivot really quickly to working from home and bring their workforce up to speed. But that's a Bay Area company that's always had that business model super successfully. They've made it, they've enabled people to make money working from home, and they've enabled people to get the expert answers that they want and need for much less than it costs normally. So this whole new world, it might not be so bad.
Yeah, a friend of mine once said that it's an ill wind that doesn't blow someone some good. And I think one of the
Oh,
good things, or one of the positive things to come out of this, is we're learning to work in a whole different way and work quicker. I think you saw the joke that I posted last week. One of the differences between 2019 and 2020, 2019, weekend, 2020, what week? We kind of lose track of time. I certainly have.
oh my gosh, isn't that so true? I love that. Like pre-coronavirus, post-coronavirus. And one of the biggest questions I have is what's going to happen to sporting events, especially here in the Bay Area. Do you have any insight on that? I know that's an area of expertise for you.
Yeah, it's interesting, Jen. I have worked on a number of large-scale sporting events, Super Bowl 50, the rugby championships last year, and I spoke to someone last week who's in charge of large arenas around the world, and they said, interestingly enough, large arenas are going to become kind of mobile city halls for a while. For instance, in San Francisco, when Mayor Breed is at City Hall, she's really at Moscone Center because they're social distancing and whatnot. He believes that sports will come back first without some spectators. And one of the things we talked about, and I've got my fingers crossed, is the PGA tournament was supposed to be in San Francisco this month and obviously got postponed. And they're hoping that it'll be there in August. And of course, it would not only be a great morale booster for San Francisco, but it would show the world that this is going to be the new normal for a while. They may play it without an audience, but hopefully we will see PGA champions in San Francisco playing golf, not only for sporting fans, but also as a great way to show that San Francisco is coming back.
Oh my gosh. I so appreciate that insight. I'm just being told by our producers who are somewhere working from home in a studio in San Francisco. I'm not sure where, but I'm just being told that you have another interview for us with maybe a tax expert. And it's crazy how much we're needing that advice right now as well. So David, gonna wrap up our chit chat, even though we're dying to catch up more with you. But you have another interview, I understand?
Yes, and next up, our conversation taped just a little bit earlier with Jill from TaxAid, and also the importance of the census to this year's tax filing. So we'll take a look. Other than taxes. Now, this year, of course, the deadline for filing has been extended, and for some Bay Area residents, there is free help. Our next guest has been the executive director of TaxAid since 2013, and prior to that, Jill Sturm worked in the Peninsula and San Francisco at Habitat for Humanity. Jill, welcome to the Great Pause.
Thanks, David. I'm really happy to be here.
So can you tell our viewers about TaxAid? Who is your workforce and who do you serve?
Absolutely, happy to. TaxAid is one of my favorite topics, actually. So, TaxAid is a nonprofit. We were founded in 1988 by attorneys actually from Morrison and Foerster here in San Francisco, who really wanted to make sure people with low income could receive expert tax assistance and get the full tax refunds that they deserve. So here we are 32 years later, going strong. Our volunteer base is mostly CPAs and accountants and attorneys who volunteer their time, and they keep coming back year after year.
Now, of course, the tax deadline has shifted this year. I know whenever I speak to our tax guy at the beginning of the year, he's like, oh, the weeks before April 15th and after are really stressful. But this year, of course, even though the tax deadline has been shifted, I imagine that it's made more work for you, not less. How has that impacted your work and workload?
That's a great question. Well, it's sort of like this whole thing, the great pause, has really slowed everything down for all of us, right? And we're really taking this time to reevaluate what's important to us. And I have to say, like, taxes are not the top of that list for a lot of people. So a lot of people are waiting, they know they have a couple more months. However, the clients that we help are people that really depend on their tax refunds. So the average income of the people we help is $22,000 a year. And many of those folks are working families with children, and they will get tax refunds of $6,000 or maybe even up to like $12,000. So during a time like this in the history where they might not be able to work, that tax refund is more important than ever. So we have to keep going. Even though we're in a shelter in place, we are helping people virtually with their taxes.
So even though the deadline has been extended, if someone wants to file early, does that mean that potentially they could get their refund earlier?
Absolutely, absolutely. So people are getting their refunds. We are highly encouraging people to electronically file their tax returns instead of mailing them in, because I think the IRS is not at full capacity because, they're all over the country and they are also sheltering in place as well. So we're telling people, don't mail things in. Let's electronically file your return. Let's get your deposit direct deposited into your bank account so you're not waiting for a check to come in the mail.
Now, of course, there's another way that Uncle Sam is delivering money this year. Those is the checks that supposedly are coming from the stimulus. Are some of your clients and colleagues concerned about the stimulus checks? What should people know about that and unemployment and how both of those things work together or not?
That's a great question. So we luckily have like a crackerjack team of CPAs and accountants that scoured all of that information, and they actually read the entire stimulus bill of 800 plus pages. And we have a full page dedicated on our website with all of the information about the economic impact payments on our website at tax-aid.org. What's interesting about the stimulus is that, some people earn such a low income or they don't have an income and they're not required to file a tax return. However, they might need to take some action in order to get that stimulus payment. So we do have links on that page of our website where people can find all their questions answered and put in their bank information, in particular on the IRS website, to make sure that they get that stimulus check.
800 pages sounds like a lot. How unusual. Yeah. Did you read all 800 pages?
Oh, no. I told you we have these crackerjack CPAs that read it all, and particularly through the lens of the people that we serve, right? So we serve people below a certain income rate, and all of those folks will qualify for the stimulus because I think, our income limit is $55,000. I think the stimulus, it's under $75K. So anybody that TaxAid would help is going to get a stimulus check, which is great. They need it. They really need it.
Right. In your experience, though, how unusual is it? I'm sure probably the answer is going to be unprecedented, like everything else for the last 2 months, to have a bill of this magnitude and this complexity come out basically in less than 2 weeks.
Right. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I mean, I think there was maybe under the Bush administration a stimulus of a much smaller amount several years ago. Um, the closest thing to this would have been the Affordable Care Act, which was also kind of administered through the IRS and the healthcare initiative there, but nothing this size. And who knows, maybe more is coming down the pike. So we'll just have to wait and see. It's just unprecedented times. That's the word I keep hearing, unprecedented, and it's so accurate, right?
Well, last question. We've only got just a few more moments, but I couldn't help but notice your shirt, which I'm sure was consciously worn. I count.
That's right.
This is a
That's
census
right.
year. So I imagine
That's
that's
right.
all about the census. Tell us about how I count and how does the census impact taxes?
Absolutely. So actually, the census impacts every single person living in the United States. It's a critical exercise we have to go through every 10 years to make sure we know who lives in the United States. So it's not just because you see those signs on the freeway of what the population is when you enter a city, but for everything that you can imagine is determined by population data. In this time during a pandemic, how critical is it for us to know how many people live here so we can have our emergency services and our healthcare services prepared for the amount of people that might fall ill. So this is a super important thing, but it's everything else you can think of, like how much housing gets built in a community, where schools go, where fire stations happen. You know, I mean, all of these things, if we don't know who lives in the community, those services won't be available to us. So we are really making sure that people take this time during the shelter in place to respond to the census. It's the first time ever that it's being conducted online and by phone, and it couldn't be easier to do. We really want to make sure people do it that way instead of having to have a census taker come to their door and knock on their door to get that information. We don't want anybody to risk their health or to answer the door at this point, right? It's super important. So we really want people to go online. Again, we have a whole page on our website dedicated to this too. And yes, you count. Everybody needs to count. It doesn't matter about legal status or anything. Every person living here needs to be counted.
Got it. In our last 10 seconds, tell people again where they can go online to find you and this free tax help.
Absolutely. So our organization is TaxAid, and our website is tax-aid.org, and we can find all kinds of information. You can find our contact there and how we can help you now with your taxes and to get your refund.
Great. Thank you, Jill, so much, and especially thank you to all your volunteers. Jen,
Great.
back to you.
Oh my gosh, another fantastic interview, David. Thank you so much. I count, you count. You know who else counts? The more than 30 million people. I don't know if it's up to 33, 34 million people across the United States have filed for unemployment since the coronavirus, since this pandemic really took hold of America. Now, this is shaping up to be one of the worst economic downturns in history. And here in the Bay Area, where we already have an affordable housing crisis, so many people are now faced with, do I make rent or do I buy groceries this month? Last week, I interviewed someone for a USA Today story who's been an incredible advocate for renters here in the Bay Area. His name is Brad Hearn. He's with the Housing Rights Committee of San Francisco, HRCSF. I understand Brad, well, he was with us a few minutes ago, and hopefully he's able to join us here live. Brad, are you here?
Yes. Yes, I'm here.
Oh, hi. Hi, Brad.
Hi.
Brad, thank you
Hi.
so much for joining us. How many people here in the Bay Area are really struggling with this issue of being able to pay rent right now?
Yes. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. This is a very important
There
topic.
you are. Hi, Brad. Sorry, we're finally seeing each other's faces. Hi, buddy. Thank you so much for joining me. You were an incredible resource for that national news story last week. So thank you so much for joining us.
It was a great article.
Tell me what we're facing here.
Absolutely. In California, statewide, there are about 17 million tenants. And San Francisco alone is a majority tenant city. At least about 2/3 of San Francisco residents rent. So with millions of tenants already rent burdened, meaning that every month when rent is due, more and more of their income is going to rent, more than 30%, 50%, 75%. Millions of tenants are affected, particularly unemployed tenants, but also people whose hours have been cut or have additional food or medical expenses, and are now facing those really hard choices.
So, where do people go to get help when they are faced with a hard choice? I know I spoke with one young mom last week who is faced with rent or food. What is the first thing for anybody watching this should do if they're faced with such a difficult decision?
Yeah. If you are a San Francisco tenant in any type of housing, whether it's a private rent-controlled building, public housing, Section 8, regardless, you should reach out to the Housing Rights Committee of San Francisco. Our website is hrcsf.org. We have a tenant counseling line as well that is accessible by phone in English, Spanish, Chinese, and Russian. Outside of San Francisco, there are also organizations in cities. Oakland, for example, has the Oakland Tenants Union, and Casa Justa Just Cause. Alameda, the city of Alameda, where I used to live, has the Alameda Renters Coalition. Berkeley has the Berkeley Tenants Union. That's where I live now. And then there's Tenants Together. So if you're in a city in the Bay Area and you don't think you have a tenants' rights group, there is a statewide organization for tenants called Tenants Together. They have a free hotline for tenants to call with trained counselors in English and Spanish who can also answer questions. And their number is 888-495-8020 at tenantstogether.org.
And I should mention that we will make all of these resources available to people after today's show as well. Brad, another quick question for you here. I was a renter here in the Bay Area for more than 25 years, and I was constantly afraid of doing the wrong thing, saying the wrong thing. If things were broken in the home I rented, I often was not able to get them fixed. I felt very much I felt very scared a lot of the time. And, here I am in a very middle class world and family. And it's hard for me to fathom what so many other people are going through. But I know from talking with you last week that people have been served eviction notices. People have been threatened by landlords. What's the most important thing for people to know if or when that's coming up right now?
Sure. Well, in addition, kind of the first thing after people understand their rights as an individual tenant is also banding together with their neighbors. And this could be in a building, if you're in a multifamily building. This could be on your block, if your own particular building is smaller, like a duplex, or even if you rent in a single family home. But part of our mission is also about organizing tenants and making sure that tenants feel that they have a voice together. And we do believe tenants have a voice together and that they're stronger together. We help tenants organize what we call tenant associations, which are groups of tenants that can negotiate with their owner on any variety of issues. And we've also tried to make sure that there are legal protections in place for tenants who choose to organize and can do so safely. We believe should be a basic right, and that tenants should be able to do so freely and without retaliation.
So what is one of the maybe protests that you have going on right now? How are tenants able to come together and work for their rights right now?
Yeah.
Especially with shelter in place, right?
Yeah, absolutely. With the shelter in place orders, we've gotten creative beyond just online petitions. Online petitions were, of course, popular before shelter in place and even more so now. But we also started to do photo petitions. And we wanted to show visible support for tenants' rights and for the goals that tenants have. This is an example of the photo petition that tenants that we work with have put together in just a few weeks that was sent to elected officials, including Governor Newsom. we've been calling on Governor Newsom to provide more relief for tenants and small landlords and homeowners through mortgage and rent cancellation. We think the two should go hand in hand. It doesn't make sense to do one but not the other. And so the photo petitions are one way to do that. And we've also been collecting them from tenants throughout California. So any tenant, homeowner, small landlord who is concerned about the mortgage or rent, we encourage a selfie with a sign as a first step to connect to a bigger movement.
That's incredible. Do you think that we'll have a change in the Bay Area housing crisis as a result of this pandemic? Or do you think we'll see what happened last time during the recession when people came in and snatched up undervalued property and turned it around and started renting it out for more? What do you think will happen after this?
That is a great question. And we are looking ahead to that possibility. Part of the organizing that I personally do with tenants under very large corporate landlords in San Francisco is to begin to have those conversations with tenants so that they can possibly begin to have them with their landlords. We would like to see protections in place so that public funds can go to the acquisition of properties by community land trusts. That's actually something that may be on the ballot in San Francisco this November. But we think that public funds should be going to those acquisitions so that more properties can be taken off the private market and they can be managed by nonprofits, land trusts, and maybe even the tenants themselves.
I love that. You've given us so much hope for the renters out there who are struggling to make ends meet, for folks who can find ways to band together. Brad, how are you getting through this great pause yourself right now? And by the way, I know you told me calls went from maybe 5,000 a year to 10,000 or so a month into the housing committee. So how are you getting through all of this?
Yeah, it's become, I think for many of us in the tenants' rights world, it's become like an even busier time. And there's the blurring of lines between work and home, of course. I'm able to work from home, but many tenants are still going to work or are unemployed or working or trying to work from home themselves. I think personally, just the conversations with tenants that we have through Zoom and on the phone, those do actually keep me going. And being able to meet with tenants still and help people organize is a very heartening thing. It's a very inspiring thing.
Okay, anything else you want to make sure that people know as we struggle through? Oh, I know. I did have one other question that I want to ask you, Brad. And that is, why can't, somebody asked me this question the other day, and I said, oh, I'm going to ask Brad that question. Why can't all of these big landlords in San Francisco say, hey, don't worry about rent for the next 3 months? And if they have mortgages they have to pay, then the mortgage folks say, don't worry about paying your mortgage for 3 months, or tack everything on to the end of the engagement. Why are we not seeing more of this as a way to get through this as a community together? What's the big sticking point here?
Absolutely. That's actually something that I'm actively organizing around with tenants under San Francisco's largest landlord, Veritas Investments, who have bought properties in Oakland, the city of Alameda, and LA as well. We have called publicly on Veritas to forgive rents during shelter in place. They absolutely could afford to do it. And they've taken leadership in the past on other issues, and we think that they should take leadership at this time. So the large firms that have been doing very well for years can definitely afford to do it, and we hope that they set that example, Veritas included.
Well, you have really given me faith that there is hope out there for people who need it the most. Brad Hearn, HRCSF, an incredible resource. Can't not thank you enough for being here with us this week. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer.
David, we keep going back and forth with these just intense issues. We're talking about taxes, we're talking about rent, we're talking about finding a cure for COVID. It's just amazing who's in our community, what resources we have in our own backyard. Going back to that levity for a moment, what big things are you tackling in your world right now, and how are you finding balance between the biggest worries and then the moments of just kind of coming back to your center here?
Yeah, that's a great question. I taught a webinar yesterday for the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce. I'm on the board of directors for the Chamber of Commerce and their executive committee. As I told Rodney Fong, they must have really been trolling low to get me, but seriously, I consider it a great honor this year. I thought I was going to spend 2020 talking about how small businesses could take part in what was an incredible economic recovery out of the Great Recession in 2008. Little did we know that within a month of this incredible 170th anniversary Chamber of Commerce birthday breakfast, we'd be facing the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression and the greatest health pandemic in 102 years. So those two things kind of wipe away everything else I've ever used to stay balanced, as you say. I guess for me, what I do every day is I remember the words of my grandmother, who I think you've heard me quote before. She raised me. She was born in 1898, and I remember when I was a little boy, she would tell stories about the 1918 pandemic and the Great War, and living through the Great Depression when her dinner was buttermilk and Triscuits crumpled up in it. I remember thinking, wow, that's never going to happen to us again. But I remember when she would talk about those times, she didn't talk about them negatively. She talked about the connections that people made and that the family made. And sometimes I would turn to her and I'd ask her the same question over and over because I always wanted to hear the same answer, which has become one of my mantras. I'd say, well, Grandma, didn't you worry? And she'd say, son, worry is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it gets you no place. So when I get anxious, I just try to remember my grandmother who lived through a pandemic worse than this even, and 2 world wars, and a Great Depression, and worry was not her thing. So I try consciously not to worry. But yes, sometimes those Cheeto cheese Fritos and a glass of wine or Irish whiskey, they do help me get by too. And my grandmother was a Southern Baptist. She wouldn't have liked that.
Oh my gosh, I just love when you tell us stories. Like I'm like, I don't know if it's just this whole pandemic, if it's being, sheltered in place for so long. I get just all kind of choked up about that. I get the chills. I love that. You take me right there. I can imagine her saying and doing that. Folks watching this, we're going to toss to a very short break on the words of wisdom from David Perry's grandma. Rest in peace. Oh, I wish she was here right now. And I have a feeling, even as a Southern Baptist, she might have it. I mean, it's pandemic time. She might have a toast. Raise a glass. Cheers to you, Grandma. I know. All right, we'll be right back. Hey, David. This is Junie, and Joan, who is watching our show, my dear, dear friend Joan, said, Jen, this can't be you because Junie's not on your lap. Junie thinks that she's a lap dog. She is not. She's an Aussie door. She's an Australian Shepherd and Lab, but she does spend most, look at, I'm so sorry. We're boring you, Junie. She spends most days sitting on my lap. Yeah, so Joan, Junie says hello. She misses you very much. And as soon as shelter in place is over, she will be there licking your legs, your feet, your hands, whatever she possibly can. She misses you so much. All right, David, I know that you have an esteemed guest up next who maybe is a little more interesting than Junie. I don't know how that's true, but you have a guest, I understand.
I do. And, you know, I think that he would understand if I said that I think dogs are the most interesting species on earth. Just, you know, I knew I loved you already when I read you in the USA Today, but now that I've seen that wonderful creature on your lap, it reminds me of something that happened to my husband and I several years ago with our dear departed dog, Drew. One day I was reading in bed and she walked in and she looked up at me with this very human face. And I said, Drew, what's the meaning of life? And she said, woof. And I remember saying, oh, I don't speak dog. Talk to me now. And, you know, I've always said since then, and Alfredo and I have joked that she told us the meaning of life. She knew, but we humans just weren't patient enough to listen to a dog. Well, I got to tell you, he is as patient and as loving as a dog, and I know he would take that as a compliment. Our next guest is someone that I've known for many years. I knew him when he started his business, Budget Signs, in San Francisco, when he was a member of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, when he was a member of the California State Assembly, and then when he became a California State Senator. And when he finally left that position, he was one of the few people I've ever seen who earned praise and salutations from both sides of the aisle. I'm very delighted to have with me here in our virtual studio my friend for many years, former Senator Mark Leno. Mark?
Invitation for the opportunity. Was it W.C. Fields who suggested never share a stage with animals or children?
Yes, and he was right. So I'm sorry I didn't let you share the stage. It was a lead-in, but you know what? You can do it. You can upstage a dog.
Well, it is wonderful to be with you, and let me return the compliment. I've so appreciated not only sharing these many decades together in San Francisco with you and Alfredo, but also to see your career continue to grow by leaps and bounds and all the wonderful projects that you engage yourself in. And this great pause, it's been fun to watch it and to now participate with you in it.
Well, thank you, Mark. And of course, you know, there's been a lot written lately, especially about those of us in the gay community, the LGBTQ community, saying that this isn't our first pandemic. And of course, that's very true. AIDS impacted all of us, some more than others, and certainly no one more than you. And at the risk of being personal, I would just like to start this conversation with telling us about your experience of AIDS, HIV, and how that, in a very real way, unless I'm mistaken, led you into a political career.
Sure. One thing that this virus, without a doubt, has in common with HIV is that the epidemic gets very real when it knocks on your door. Until then, it's a friend or a friend of a friend or something you read about or hear about in the news. But when it's in your home, it's another thing entirely. And I think we've all benefited from the reporting of Chris Cuomo, for example, who has shared with us his experience with the virus, and then making sure he did everything possible to make sure that his wife and family didn't get it, though she did. And so there is the personal side of the story, and there's the reporting side of the story. So with regard to HIV, as a gay man who was in San Francisco from 1977, when we started to first hear of the first cases and the famous photographs that Bobby Campbell put up of his own KS Legion in the windows of what's now Walgreens at the corner of 18th and Castro around 1981. And we didn't know what it was. It was certainly frightful. And then we saw it sweep through our community so very, very quickly. And whereas with this virus, it was genome plotted within weeks and tests were developed to identify who's carrying, who's not. Of course, this federal government has completely botched the testing process so that we can benefit from that knowledge. But we didn't, as a globe, isolate HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, until 1984. So we were just in the dark. And so all of the treatment of those who were, and the deaths were very gruesome because, of course, it destroyed immune systems. And so all sorts of horrific diseases were visited upon those with the virus, no longer with an immune system to fight off things that the rest of us fight off regularly. We didn't even have that test until 1984. It knocked on my door when the younger brother of my partner, Doug Jackson, who was just out of college, had lost 50 pounds over the summer of 1985 and was no longer able to care for himself, nor could his young roommates. And we decided that since we had an extra bedroom and bath here in San Francisco, and probably for what it was worth, the best medical care and understanding of the virus right here in San Francisco at UCSF, his 23-year-old brother Stuart came to live with us. That was Thanksgiving of '85. He was dead of pneumocystis pneumonia the first week in March '86. So it happened very quickly. At that point, there was a test, and Doug and I knew we needed to get tested. And we discovered at that point in '86, that Doug was positive, that I was negative. And by June of 1990, Doug had died. So that is earth-shattering for everybody and anybody. I became lifelong friends and close relations with his beautiful family from Decatur, just outside Atlanta, Georgia. A Christian family in the best sense of the word. And I, of course, from Jewish background, never had that kind of an intimate relationship with a family that took its religion and religious beliefs so to heart. And though his parents had to deal with the unfamiliarity of having three out of three gay sons, two of whom got sick and died. Doug's twin brother, Win, is alive and well in New York. But they had to deal with all of that, along with the stigma, which was enormous, and I should really cut to the chase. Though this virus is carrying a stigma as well, and our president only uses it to further separate and divide the country for his own political purposes, we know that Asian Americans are attempted to be blamed with this, and there have been violence against the Asian American community. We also know that for multiple and complex social and medical reasons, there are disproportionate cases of positive testing and deaths in the African American Latino communities as we speak. So, I saw one horrible quote today by the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Alex Azar, who blamed the victims of these meatpacking plants for their own demise. That it's not the working conditions in these factories, it's the way they live their lives that is imposing this virus upon them. So there's a similarity as well, stigmatizing minority communities. It's always about pointing the finger. The president himself has said, I take absolutely no responsibility for this. So he's got to blame others, blames China, blames the workers as he forces them back into unsafe working conditions. A lot of similarities. I just went back to look at an old YouTube, anyone can find it. Larry Speakes was a young man who was the press secretary for President Ronald Reagan in the mid-1980s, early 80s as well. One of the first questions ever at a press conference, at a press briefing in the White House, the question addressed to Larry Speakes, was about this new gay plague, as it was called at the time, because we hadn't even given it a name, we didn't know the virus. And he not only couldn't answer the question responsibly as to what is the president's position on this, has he been briefed, is he aware that there are already hundreds of deaths and then within months, thousands of deaths? And it was a laughing joke at that press briefing. The press corps laughed at it. The reporter was derided for having an interest in it. Larry Speakes' comment and response was, well, I don't have it. Do you? Smirk, smirk, giggle, giggle. That's how it was dealt with at first. And of course, it's a historical fact that the president of the United States, Ronald Reagan, would not even say the three letters HIV or make reference to the thousands of Americans who had already died until 1985, when the death toll was over 20,000. It's pretty stunning. And at that point, Reagan said, oh yes, this is a top priority for me. We're going to invest many millions in research on this. And then when he unveiled his 1986 federal budget, he actually cut funding for research by 11%. So it was cruel, it was disrespectful, it was heartless in every way. Again, very similar to the way this president is dealing with the pandemic.
And you know, but the first time that Ronald Reagan said the word AIDS, I remember it because I was actually there. I was much younger, obviously. And I was actually a catering waiter at a firm called Glorious Food. And there was a big event. It was actually right before the first AIDS conference. And I remember the president said it, but he was somehow very offhand about it. And Elizabeth Taylor was there at that event. And I remember an interview she did years later. She said, that was the first and only time that I did not interrupt a president of the United States when he got something wrong. And that's when she became such a heroine to not only the AIDS HIV community, but I think to the LGBT community in specific. You know, my last question for you, Mark, is with that history that you have just shared with us in a very personal way and your decades of leadership politically, always sticking up for the disenfranchised, whether it was people living with AIDS, HIV, communities of color dealing with discrimination, the transgender community, even when there were members of the LGBT community, or I should say the LGB community, who didn't understand issues of the transgender community. You always stood up for the underdog. Right now, with all of that history and having seen another administration ignore a pandemic and go against science, what advice would you have, speaking as someone who's been through this, a gay elder, as it were, pardon me, what advice do you have for this generation of young people facing this pandemic, for all people facing this pandemic?
A couple of things, David. Very thoughtful question. First and foremost, even in the darkest hours and our staying in place has challenged all of us in very real ways, each of us with different circumstances, some in very cramped studio apartments, others sharing small spaces, others having to go through it all by themselves, different experiences, but a challenge to all of us. and especially to younger people and young adults for whom I have such concern right now, because their future lives are at risk because we don't know what our economy, what our nation, if we'll have a nation. And I don't want to get dark about it, because what I'm about to say is never relinquish hope. And for obvious reasons, we've got to keep our spirits up. We've got to keep our mental health in good form and never be shy to ask for help, for counseling, if that's where you find yourself. But don't give up hope, because we're all going to do everything we can by staying in place and by supporting our community organizations that need funding right now, because everything's at risk. So we want to give hope, and isn't that a coincidence that that was Harvey Miller's big message, of course, always, his use of the word in a slightly different context. But beyond that, as a community of us's, and that's also borrowing from Harvey's lexicon, and the us's are all of us who are a part of minority communities, whether it's because we're Jewish or gay or from an ethnic community or treated like a minority due to our gender, even though there are more women among us than men. We know where discrimination is. We us's have to continue to build coalitions and keep our coalitions strong, because it's only united and together that we can overcome the hurdles, the obstacles, the hate, the lies, and all that those who are currently in power in Washington are doing just to hold on to power for the sake of power itself. Not to save a life, not to save a job, not to save our economy, just to win an election in November. So it can be very dispiriting. Nancy Pelosi's phrase, if I can summon it right now, is we don't criticize, or we organize. And we've got to think wisely in political terms. How can we make sure that we keep ourselves intact, our communities intact, and then do the work that's necessary to change the course of this nation come November, because the future depends upon it.
Thank you, Mark. You know, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. From one us to another us. Thank you. And since I know that you would have been a wonderful rabbi, that rabbinical training came in handy. Thank you for that, Mark. That was.
And if I may, just one last, since you touch on that. And when I talk about hope, I think we have to take a step prior to that, which is to realize, as tough as times may be, even for those who are getting sick and hopefully come out of it in one piece, to count our blessings every day, to have gratitude. Gratitude, I think, probably is the foundation stone for hope. Because as long as we are appreciative, and sometimes on the toughest days, it gets to the most basic. Grateful for having a roof over our heads, grateful for having food on the table, grateful to have something in our pocket to go get tomorrow's food for the table, a friend that we can call when in need, a family member, things that so many people do not have right now and are fearful because they don't know where that next paycheck's coming from, and they don't know where the next rent check's coming from. So for all of us who have these basic needs covered, be grateful, count our blessings in a regular fashion, daily, by the hour. We're in crisis mode right now. And then with that in place, hang on to that hope, which can be the fuel to fire our activism and engagement.
Well, thank you, Mark. You know, my grandma, as I often quote, says there were two phrases that were important to remember: please and thank you. So please be safe. Please come back and talk with us soon after this is over, so you can share your thoughts with us. And thank you. Thank you for that. Jen?
Thank you too, Dave. Keep up your good work. And Jen, thank you.
All are such an amazing human being. I'm sitting here trying not to cry. I was texting with my 19-year-old daughter, who's a political science major, who's upstairs, doing college from home right now. And I was saying, you have to watch this. You have to listen to this. You're such an inspiration. And I just cannot thank you enough for sharing all of those words with us. You reminded me, don't look what you can't do. Think about what you can do. And there are little things that all of us can do every single day, from hugging our dog to being kind to our children and spouses as we all get frustrated with sheltering in place. And David, one of the last things I wanted to talk with you about was, I go outside and I run on trails over here in the East Bay. I live in Oakland, and I run around the trails over here. And I've watched this strange thing happen, from nobody was wearing masks to now there are quite a few people wearing masks, but not giving people safe social distance. And I've this is one of my kind of rants. I ranted on Facebook about it this week. I'm not sure why anybody would not be, just can't be bothered to wear a mask. Whether, CDC recommends it, that's beside the point. We don't know much else that we can do to help right now. What big deal is it? Even if it's not that big of a help, to put a little piece of cloth over your face, and then out on the trails, hey, I can't go any more into this poison oak than I already am. Could you give me a little room? So I did this yesterday, and I'm sure that your grandma would not be a fan of this. But I said to a couple, it was mostly teenagers, I said, hey guys, I might have the coronavirus. Or, hey guys, I just tested positive for the coronavirus. Hey guys, I have never seen anyone move so fast in all my life. And I feel kind of horrible. It's kind of horrible. I don't even know that I should be admitting this, but I mean, people were walking down the trail, coming right at me. I'm trying to run up this trail. I'm like running through poison oak. I'm way off the trail, doing everything I can. They had masks pulled down to here, and were a foot away from me. You would not believe how fast they moved. Hey, I don't want to get you sick. Just kind of like, I don't know what to do about that. And I know that it's an issue that's just getting worse and worse and worse. So would grandma be okay with that?
Yeah, my grandma, I don't want to insinuate that my grandmother was a wallflower. She was the original steel magnolia. And, probably what she would say to those people would be something, if you're from the South, where I am from and my family, there's a saying when someone does something really thoughtless or selfish, a true Southerner, including my grandma, would just say to them, bless your heart. And in the South, bless your heart is kind of the equivalent of the F-bomb. I'm just saying, bless your heart. That's what she would say.
Yeah, and what struck me, even as I was saying it running up that hill yesterday, is, hey guys, I might have coronavirus. Could you give me a little room? Or hey, I have it. Could you give me a little room? What struck me is that it was, I'm safe to say that. Mark wasn't safe to say that. The people going through the HIV and AIDS pandemic were not safe to say that they had tested positive. It's still to this day, so many people have to worry about their safety and have to worry about people's reactions to them. We know about the jogger in the South and in South Carolina and what happened to him. I mean, we have to stand together. We have to stand up for what's right, exactly like Mark said. And it's little tiny things. But I also, I'm feeling this, the longer the shelter in place goes on, the worse the economy. I'm feeling this kind of angst come out. And if there's any way that if, you see something, say something, if we can just remember, we just have to stick together, be kind, and try to get through this. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, well, something else my grandma always said, which now has been taken up on Facebook, you can be anything you want in life, son, but be kind. And right now, we need to all be real kind. And, my job is coming up with things that people can remember, a lot of public safety campaigns over the years. And I saw something yesterday that the governor of North Carolina said that was to remember for the next few months as we get back into the great recovery, remember the 3 W's. And they are wash, wear, and wait. Meaning, before you leave your house and when you're outside, wash your hands a lot, wear a mask, and when you wait in line, 6 feet apart. And You know, I was pleased to see that raccoons have become kind of the mascot for staying safe during COVID because, you know, they wash their hands all the time. As you see, we got a little raccoon over my shoulder. We'll talk about that another show. But I think we need to remember that. Be kind. And over the next few weeks, the 3 W's: wash, wear, and wait.
And if you get desperate, just tell somebody you have the Rona, and watch how they do the right thing, how quickly they do the right thing. Hey, David, to your point, we better wrap this show up, huh?
Yeah, thank you so much. You know, and I just want to give a big shout out to Beyond Picks, who's put this together. Anita has been credible. Thank you for your philanthropy and entrepreneurship. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Oscar. I mean, you and I, Jen, have done a lot of live TV, but we've never done it quite like this. So the technical issues have been challenging, but we're pulling it off. We did have one more interview that was scheduled for today, which we weren't able to do. That's Joe D'Alessandro from San Francisco Travel. We'll have him on next week. So please, everyone, be safe. Thank you all, the people at Beyond Picks, but mainly thank you to all our viewers who have turned in. I hope it's been useful, and thank you, Jen.
Thank you so much, David. I know that we have the CEO of Nextdoor on this show next week. Sarah Fryer is coming on, and they are doing an incredible service along with Walmart to help people who might have a lot of food insecurity, might not be able to eat right now. So many wonderful things going on in this community. I know we have some surprising freebies also from our wonderful public library, a report on contact tracking software that will not invade your privacy but will be used to keep us all safe. And I want to urge you, the folks at home sheltering safely in place, to please send us your comments, send us some video to use in the show. This, The Great Pause, it's all about you, it's all about me, it's all about all of us doing what we can to get through this together. David?
Thanks for watching, everyone. And remember, we are getting through this. We will get through this. Keep on keeping on.